Presenting Mercury as a deadly element.
You might be wondering where mercury comes from.
Mercury is a naturally occurring element that is released by volcanoes and the weathering of rocks. But the majority of the mercury released into the environment actually comes from anthropogenic pollution. Mercury is expelled as a vapor from coal-burning industrial plants, since mercury occurs naturally in coal and fossil fuels. Once the mercury becomes airborne, it can be deposited back to the ground through rain, dust, or air deposition.
And now let's talk about mercury's interactions with the human body.
Mercury in a liquid state is generally non-toxic if taken orally. In fact, only about 0.1% of mercury is absorbed through the GI tract after oral ingestion. There are limited case studies involving mercury ingestion, but one involving a 3-year-old Libyan boy who consumed 750 grams of elemental mercury was conducted. He was entirely asymptomatic, despite having a serum mercury level of 91 micrograms per liter, the normal level being 5 micrograms per liter. And as you can see in this radiograph, there are dense opacities in all the intestinal segments from this large quantity of mercury ingested. But after 7 days, the blood mercury level was almost back to normal at 7 micrograms per liter, and the remainder of the mercury passed through his body without any negative impacts to his health. In its vaporized state, mercury is much more harmful. 80% and above of mercury is absorbed by the lungs and into the bloodstream. The mercury then accumulates in the brain, liver, and kidneys. It is then eliminated primarily through the urine and feces. Exposure symptoms to mercury vapor include cough, shortness of breath, fever, tremors, malaise, axonal sensorimotor polyneuropathy, gingivitis, delusions and hallucinations, and mercurial erythricism. And now to talk about the methods of identification and quantification of mercury. The two most common ways to detect mercury in the body is through blood and urine tests. And now for more spectroscopic techniques. Cold vapor atomic absorption spectroscopy is one of the ways to detect mercury in the body. It detects mercury 2 ions in water, amalgam, and hair samples. This technique selectively separates and concentrates ultra-trace amounts of mercury 2 ions. The instrument has a pump that transports the sample into a gas-liquid separator, where a stream of pure dry gas is introduced to the mixture to release mercury vapor. The gas then carries the mercury through a dryer and into an atomic absorption optical cell. Once in this optical cell, the elemental mercury will absorb light at 253.7 nanometers in logarithmic proportion to the concentration of the sample. Using this principle, the detector is able to determine the quantity of mercury present in the sample, and the concentration can be displayed on the accompanying software. Another technique is inductively coupled plasma atomic emission spectrometry, which measures mercury in aqueous solutions and quantifies low levels of mercury 2 ions. This method is fairly similar, except it is emission spectroscopy, so it excites atoms with a plasma, causing them to emit radiation at wavelengths characteristic of mercury if it is present. And now to talk about mercury, forensic context through history. Historically, cinnabar was used from 1100 BC to 300 AD to produce bright orange pigments on ceramics, murals, and tattoos. Later on, during the Age of Alchemy, mercury was used to dissolve gold. The pure gold could then be collected by distilling off the mercury. In more modern chemistry contexts, mercury is used in fluorescent lamps, thermometers, dental amalgams, medicine, for the production of chemicals, and to make liquid mirrors. In the year 2000, 16 male Zulu ex-chemical workers who worked in a mercury acetate plant in South Africa were taking legal actions against their employers after being exposed to large quantities of mercury vapor for over 5 years. As a result, they all suffered from varying chronic neurobehavioral effects. Recently, in 2019, there was an unusual case of a 36-year-old Japanese man poisoned by his acquaintance. He added liquid mercury to his cigarettes, so when lit in a battery-powered holder, it vaporized. After smoking 14 of the cigarettes in less than a day, the man went to the hospital after experiencing flu-like symptoms. The rest of the cigarettes were found to have 1.57 grams of mercury, which was confirmed using X-ray fluorescence spectrometry.